Working Cows Podcast, episode 386. This episode is brought to you by C90 Ocean Minerals.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag Studios. And this episode is brought to you by C90 Ocean Minerals. C90 Ocean Minerals, the leading mineral and trace element sea salt for your herd, is now available nationwide at Tractor Supply Company. We're excited to bring the incredible benefits of our mineral-rich sea salt to more farmers and ranchers across the country. To find your closest Tractor Supply location, visit us at c-90.com/tractor today. Trouble with flies? Select stores also carry C90 mineral salt with garlic for fly control. Learn more today at c-90.com/tractor. Very excited to be joined today by Richard and Tina McConnell. We're going to talk to them about getting momentum started on a cattle drive, or when we're trying to move livestock from point A to point B. How do we get momentum started, and how do we maintain it throughout that drive to accomplish all the goals that we have, not the least of which is reducing the stress on the animals involved in the drive. So for those of you who don't know, Tina is Bud Williams' daughter, and Richard and Tina both obviously learned what they know about stockmanship directly from Bud Williams himself. So very much looking forward to this conversation. Tina, Richard, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast.
Well, thanks for having us, Clay. We appreciate every chance we get to try to get the word out that there are better ways to handle livestock than I grew up handling livestock. And I guess that goes back to my dairy growing up time. And we had no idea there was but one way to handle animals, and that was force them where you want them and make them do what you want. But after I was fortunate in that we had where I worked, we had a subscription to the Stockman Grass Farmer, and I started reading Bud's first articles that he had written that came out published in the Stockman Grass Farmer, and seemed like every word of every article all rang true. And I guess it was probably at about a time in my life when the parts start to not work quite as good as they once did, and age seems to creep up on us whether we like it or not. And in reading that, it spurred me into thinking that there might be a better way, or at least another way, which ends up being much better for both the people that are handling the stock and the stock themselves. So it's a win-win for both the stock and the people that handle them. And I read every article, and of course, I tried a few of the things that I had read about, but I had no idea that stockmanship was as broad and deep as what it ended up I know now. And I first thought that when we went to the first stockmanship school there in Bowie, Texas in 2003, I thought, well, it's just about driving stock, and everybody knows how to do that. You get behind them and you make some noise and you zip around a little bit and they go. And, most of the times they do. but seldom did they go where I wanted them to. And then I got into it a bit and started working on doing better at what I was doing when I was working the stock. And I started seeing the benefits. And as they unfolded, they got uh, wider and wider and deeper all the time. And so, what I thought in the beginning was just get behind them and make some noise, and they go a little ways or they go somewhere. Um, I realized that this was more of a life challenge than anything else. That it's not gonna it even if you go to a 2 day 16-hour school, that's going to be enough to start, and it's not going to be enough to get you to where you need to be without a lot of personal experience and being more observant to what you're causing. Because I think a lot of times people see the cattle right in front of them. They watching those, and they need to be watching the lead instead of the animals on the back, because the ones on the back, they're pretty well going to be right where they are, because they're following other animals, because those are instincts that that we can't undo, nor do I want to undo them. I just want to learn how to work with them. And you know, animals have instincts, and we as humans have instincts, and they're pretty much direct opposites of one another. And Bud realized that, I think, 45 years of intense observation and and remembering every step that he took and what it did or what it created, uh, gave him a leg up. Well, if I want him to do that next time, I'll remember what happened here, because it wasn't what I wanted today. And so he started putting things together that, of course, I think most of us know that animals want to follow other animals. They like doing that. And we can use that, because once we get one in the corral or in the pasture or in the alley or whatever it is, they all seem to want to come along behind that one. But there's so many other things. They 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 want to see what's pressuring them is another instinct. And so if you're out of position, and you get them to turn their head around and look at you, then it won't be long until they'll either be turning out or turning back and coming back the wrong direction, and that's normally not what we want.
Yeah, and I think I heard you allude to some of that on Jared Sorensen's profitable or the Regenerative Legacy Summit that you and I both, or we all participated in.
Yes.
And I actually had an opportunity to kind of put that in practice yesterday. We were talking earlier about delivering yearlings or taking yearlings off the place that had been there for the summer, and got my pickup stuck trying to get to the pasture we were taking them to.
Oh, man.
And so we unloaded them and walked them about half a mile to where we were going, and kind of cheated a little bit. The other trailer that was ahead of me made it through the spot I got stuck in, and so he had the cattle still loaded, and so he drove down the road, and I followed them. But I did kind of try to remain cognizant of the fact that I wasn't ever walking straight behind them. I was always trying to stay off to the side so that they could see me. And I noticed a couple of times when things would start to maybe wander away, that I could you don't have to get all the way to the front. You just kind of veer off at a little bit less of an angle than they're taking so that they see you, and then they turn back in on their own. And so that was kind of fun to see and notice. And I think that's really and for those who don't know, I'm sure everybody listening does know, but for those who don't know, Tina's dad was Bud Williams. And I think that's one of the things that I have come to realize in talking to other people who had been around him, was one of the things that set him apart, not the only thing, but one of the many things that set him apart, was his ability to notice what he was noticing and noticing the impact of his actions on the livestock. Right. And so I guess from my curiosity has been piqued this year. These yearlings that came to us were very tame. They come off of a ranch where the son is running the ranch. He's 55, I think, and the dad is still around helping from time to time. And he just turned 90. I think he'll be 91 in December.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and so they keep everything very calm. They don't keep wild cattle around, because when you have a 90-year-old helping, you want to make sure he's not getting run over and everything. And so these were very tame. And so my struggle with them, and why I reached out to you, the topic I'd like to cover, was the idea of getting momentum started with those. And now you talked about your experience. I was blessed. I didn't have the same experience you did. As my dad, actually, probably in the early 2000s, or late 90s, attended Bud Williams Marketing and Stockmanship School in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So that affected, I never remember taking a group of more than 5 when we were headed up to the Bud box and all those things, So I grew up in a good environment, and my dad taught me a lot of good things. But I've actually never taken a full-on stockmanship school where we actually moved cattle. I've sat in classrooms where people talked about it, but I've never actually been out and seen somebody who has these techniques in their back pocket work. And so that's my style of learning, is I need to watch somebody do it before I can really understand it. And so with these that are very calm heifers, I was struggling to get momentum with them. And so my context was, we're trying to move from one paddock to the next, and might be a 4 or 5 acre paddock at the most, and we're moving to the next one. And probably maybe a sign they weren't ready to move or whatever, but they were kind of spread out, and I'd get them grouped up and try to start moving them, but it was hard to get momentum. So what would be your approach in trying to get momentum started in that group?
Well, my approach, and as always, the most difficult animals to handle are the very gentle and the very wild. And everything else, I call them average sale barn cattle, and that's what I'm going to call them. Those are easy because they've got plenty of movement to them, as long as we don't take too much out. And it's easy to take too much movement out of cattle. And then if you keep going with that, it won't be long until they don't move at all. And
at all.
Yeah, at all. They're, legs out, and that's the worst of that end. But you can always take a lot of that panic movement, is what we refer to it as, out of these extremely excitable animals. And as far as the really gentle animals, like we started talking about here, I always go down and set up another break wherever they're going to go, or I have a break set up ready for them. And then I make a little gate in the end of the poly braid, and that makes it so that not only I get a chance to work with the animals, but they get a chance to be handled almost every day. And in doing that, every time I see them, I teach them something good. And so you end up with several hundred things in a year that you've taught them that's good, as opposed to doing something that teaches them something bad. And to go along with that, when you're moving them that way, you're having a chance to, you're preparing them for what they're going to go through someday when you drive them in a corral and you sort them, or you wean them, or you load them and haul them away. You're getting them ready for that. And I keep telling people, don't miss all those opportunities that you could have been setting up for what is way down the road ahead, and having them ready to do the things that you're going to ask them to do when you want them to do it. And to start movement, the best thing is to pressure into the sides of animals, because that's where they like that pressure. They can see it, and they know what it is that's pressuring them, and it's easy for them to go the direction they're headed. And that's one of those instincts that we can use to our advantage. When I go in, I don't really care where the gate is. I just want to start movement. And so even if it's away from the gate, that's fine with me, because I'll drive them away from the gate, because they want to start the direction they're headed. So I let them do that. And in doing that, once you get that movement started, then I do everything I can not to stop it. Because if you stop it, the next time you try to start it, it'll be more difficult. And each subsequent starting after that first initial start will get more and more difficult each time, because they seem to know that you don't understand what you need to do to make them move, or to let them move is what I meant to say.
You asked them to start, and they started. Then you asked them to stop, and they stopped.
And then you say, well, no, I really want you to go. And so they start again reluctantly the second time. But by the third time, they don't want any part of it. They'll just say, well, I'm just going to leave the whole,
or stop
and just stand there. And furthermore, a lot of times that you get them like that, and you take the pressure off, and they go a little ways and then they stop. And every time you pressure them, then they stop again as soon as you take that pressure off. And so you don't want to keep starting and stopping them. You start them, and then you just do everything. You do your best not to walk in the direction that they're headed.
That's probably
that's what everybody wants to do, because we're human and we want to follow animals.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, you slow or stop movement. Anytime you're walking parallel with animals, you're either slowing or stopping movement.
And that can be even just one step in the direction they're going. If you're starting movement and you're going, pressuring the side, and you just take one step the same direction they're going, honestly, it can stop that movement, just like Richard was saying. And it's so common. Have somebody video you. You'll swear you don't do it, but you look at that video and you'll see that you are. So really, really, when just no step in the direction. If you're on horseback, same thing. Go side to side, side to side.
Yeah, and so it does it end up being kind of like a pattern of continuous Z's?
Yeah,
it is. It's a zigzag.
Yep.
And it will likely be wider in the beginning to get them started than it will end up being later on, because it takes less. that's almost like perpetual motion, driving a herd of cattle. In other words, the ones that are in the front are pulling the back, and the ones in the back are pushing the front ones. And if you get it started right, and see, I keep telling folks, it all starts with the gather. And if the gather is done properly, then all the rest of it is going to go much better than what it likely would have had it not started right from the gather.
Yeah.
And so you have to be very careful in that they like straight lines too. And so you walk straight lines, you don't curve, because we as humans love to curve. And that's what all predators do. And I don't want them, they already know I'm a predator. They know without me telling them. And so I need to do things that predators don't do.
Mm.
And that's walk straight lines, and like you were talking, the zigzag back and forth across the back, and being very cognizant not to move forward with them, but to keep my pattern going, and so that they feel that pressure on the side rather than straight up the back, which is a blind spot for them as it is for you and I. And they don't like being pressured there.
And that's a difference. If you're just walking behind the animal, if you're crossing behind the animal, that's okay, because she sees you in one eye, and then you're crossing, and then she catches you in the other eye at exactly the amount of time that she anticipated, or he, the whatever livestock animal you're driving. And then they're good. Okay, he did exactly what I felt he was. He walked straight behind me, or crossed behind me, and that's okay. But if you turn and go the direction they're going, it just undoes everything.
Yeah, I think that we probably don't have to be as far to the side of them as we think for them to see us. Would you agree with that?
I think anytime I can see their eye, I know they can see me. And so I focus on being, or at least when I'm crossing, they see me coming across and they pick me up in that opposite eye. And I think that gives them confidence in that what I'm doing is the right thing. Because when you're crossing like that, you're almost always pressuring into the sides of animals and not straight up behind them.
And I think that I think it was you I heard say this, and I'm not exactly sure if it was Richard or Tina or if it was somebody else entirely, but I think I heard somebody allude to this one time, that you said they know I'm a predator before I even get there, before I tell them anything. And that's partly because our eyes are in the front of our head, like predators are, right? I mean, you think about wolves, coyotes, bears, everything. All these predators have eyes directly in the front of their head.
Right.
And that's because the prey animals need to be able to see. They've got a lot smaller blind spot than we do, because they can see quite a bit around. Now, another thing, though, is in order to get the depth perception, they have to see you with both eyes. So if you're either too far in behind them or too far away, they will tend to turn and look at you with both eyes. And you have got to understand that when that happens, what you've done, and you have to fix it. So if you're too far in behind, you get out to the side. If you're too far away, you actually get closer. Is what will help to straighten her head out, or the animal's head out. But when they look at you with both eyes, that's what they're saying. They're saying, I'm not sure. I've got to get a more exact distance going here. So that's another thing. But
and then once you've got good movement generated, you can pretty much go out and ride or walk along, back from one corner, with them until that back starts to slow down. If you see the back slowing down, then you can go right back in and start going across back and forth again to move those animals up, to push the ones ahead of them, which really goes all the way up to the lead animal.
I want to add another thing. If you're driving animals, don't ever get ahead of the back animals.
Right.
If you need to steer this group, you need the directions not going the way you want, you go straight out to the side, the opposite side of where you want them to go. It's like paddling a canoe, or it's like a marching band. But if you try and angle up the side of the group and that's a force thing. See, you're trying to force them over.
Right.
And what you're going to do is you will get ahead of back animals. And what's that back animal going to do? It's going to stop.
Yep.
And then the one in front of it is going to stop. And the one in front of that's going to stop. And then you start being upset with that darned old cow who stopped, but you stopped her. Again, this is, you are telling these animals what to do. It wasn't what you wanted. But they do what you tell them to do. Mm-hmm. But so do all of your direction work from behind the group. Just go out. It's as amazing. You would think I would have no effect on those lead. You get 300-400 head and you can go out to the side, and you better watch because you can actually turn them all the way around by that. So you watch the lead as they start turning, kind of, depending on how far you need to turn, then get back. And if there's more than one person, all those people need to be in a straight line behind the group, and they need to work together to make that turn, because the ones on the inside of the turn need to quit pressuring, because it's your marching band. You know, that guy who's on the inside
where they go around and make the corner.
Yeah, he just marches in place.
Yeah.
And the guys on the outside, man, they're going full out.
Trying to keep enough breath to play the tuba while they're
yes,
marching.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've been there. I always preferred the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot like the analogy of driving a car on a straight road. You don't just hold the steering wheel in one spot, because you won't keep going straight that way. There's continual adjustment, even when you're going straight down a road. Mm-hmm. And so there too, you always have to adjust direction, and you'll have to notice. And I think that's what so many don't do. They don't pay attention to the lead until it's already out of control. And then they start trying to fix it, but they do, one, the wrong thing to fix it, and two, they should have fixed it way earlier, because now you're late.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, C90 Ocean Minerals. C90 Ocean Minerals, the leading mineral and trace element sea salt for your herd, is now available nationwide at Tractor Supply Company. We're excited to bring the incredible benefits of our mineral-rich sea salt to more farmers and ranchers across the country. To find your closest Tractor Supply location, visit us at c-90.com/tractor today. Trouble with flies? Select stores also carry C90 mineral salt with garlic for fly control. Learn more today at c-90.com/tractor. So do you try to have the herd gathered before you try to build momentum, or do you build momentum with a small portion of them? And
I don't care about momentum until way into the drive, really.
Sure.
You don't need to worry about momentum, and really I just want them to be walking at a speed that they're comfortable with, because I know that if they're comfortable with that speed, you can drive them 10, 20 miles and they'll get there just fine. But if you're trying to hurry them, which is what a lot of people, they're always in a hurry to get stuff done, And seems to me when you're always in a hurry, it takes longer.
This is really important if you've got pairs, ewes and lambs or cows and calves. You have got to prepare them. If you just start out and say you've got a big pasture and you've got pairs all over it, you just are going to start slowly with the first group you come to and let them, it's like a signal to them, hey, we're getting ready to go. And that'll allow the cow to go find her calf, the calf to get up and realize, hey, it's time. Hey, where's mom? If you start rushing that gather, they get to bumping. Even a pair that's together can get bumped apart.
Or the cow goes ahead and the calf goes elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes 150 yards and says, oh, I forgot something. I've got to go back and get it.
But maybe it's in the group, but she's going back to where she last saw it.
She's going back to where she last was with it. And now all of a sudden you got a group going this way and a group going the opposite way. And I say always it takes as long as it takes, but normally it takes me about 10 minutes to make sure that the group is all up and ready to go. And I give them a chance to mother up. So the cow finds her calf, the calf finds its mama. And at that point, you can start to put a little pressure on them to generate movement. But so many don't want to do that. They want to just go out and start them running right from the beginning. And that just causes untold problems. So been there, done that, as we all have. So
it sounds to me like when we get together for branding season, we should have those who are trained to these ideas come a little earlier for the gather, and the rest of the ground crew that's going to be there to help with the actual physical labor part of it, they can come later.
Absolutely. They bring the donuts from 40 miles away.
There's that donut shop in Rapid, could you get them from there? And no, it is the gather is, and Richard's already made, it is so important that go well. If that gather goes well, those animals come into the corral or the catch or whatever in a proper mental state. And that's one of the things that, we don't, Dad never did call this low stress. And in later years, he talked about proper stockmanship. And that's why we use that term. Proper is a really good word. You want to do things properly in life. And getting their minds right. That's what we're going for, is we want the minds to be in a normal state. And so you've got whatever animals they are coming into your corral area, and they want to be there. You don't have to rush and slam the gate shut.
No.
If that's the situation, you're better off leaving that gate open.
Just drive them out and drive them back in until they are pleased to be where you put them.
Yeah, we helped a fella in Oklahoma, and the first time we'd work with these, and they all ran into the corral, circled in the corral, and ran back out, and it was just fine. It was great. It was no big deal. People think, oh, you've just taught them something bad. They didn't think it was a teaching. They just were going for a run, and they went, and nobody ran to slam the gate. Couldn't have slammed the gate anyway. But the next time, they were just in a proper state. They just walked in. You didn't have to even shut the gate. They were all in the right mental state to do the next step of what we were going to do with them.
We feel like calm goes right along with productive too, just as it does in people. I think all the stress, negativity that we know that it causes in people, and yet it's normally overlooked in livestock. They couldn't be stressed. They have water and they have feed and they have shade or not, and they're fine where they are. Well, maybe they are and maybe they aren't. And I've seen, and I see it more all the time, of what I used to think that animals just out grazing could not be stressed, but they are. And people won't take what little time it takes to take that stress off of them. Like when you receive those animals to custom graze in the summer, see, that's the first thing off of the truck I do with them is I'm out in front of them and I get them stopped. And then it's not long before I can drive them a little ways and I can stop them again. And at that point, I know that they are relieved from whatever they've gone through to get to that point. And so then I just walk away because I know too, I want it to be my idea to leave them, not their idea to leave me. And so oftentimes I'll stop cattle out in the middle of the training pen here on our place and just walk away. And 2 hours later, they're still exactly in the same spot where I stopped them. They'll lay down in the sun right there in that spot because they're so relieved about the situation around them at that point.
So we talked a lot about the gather being the most important part, and I just want to make sure that we've gotten that kind of covered. And so when you talk about that, you're coming into the pasture for the first time, and cows are spread out. You're getting them up and giving those calves a chance to mother up.
Right.
How are we gathering from the corners into the place that we're going to start the drive from? What's the best way to do that?
Well, usually I just start groups going in the direction that I want toward wherever they're going to end up. And I'll get them up and then just start working back and forth across the back. And that may be fairly far to get across.
And at that first is going to be a real flat angle.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be just going really flat angle because you're not putting a lot of pressure. Again, this is the mother up stage and just kind of getting them started.
It's so much advantage for so little investment of time. Mm-hmm. And yet people don't have the 10 minutes to invest in that. And so then they get to pay hours for their mistake and just keep doing it.
Or as you said before, the cortisol, stress hormones are running through their veins for hours or days or whatever it is after the stockmanship event, if you can call it that.
Sure.
And they're losing losing money on the gain that they could be achieving with animals that were not stressed.
Yeah,
See, I just want animals to perform at their optimum level. Mm-hmm. And I think they, like we, have to be in a calm state to be able to do that. They have to like where they are. They have to like what you're doing with them or to them or however you want to say that. And they need to be in the proper mental state. And I put emotional fitness at the top of the heap on that. And of course they need good feed and they need clean water and they need proper exercise. And that too, a lot of times people don't want to invest in that. And that may go more to a corral situation or a feedlot pen situation.
Although it can in these intensive grazings where you're only moving them just a little ways, and it goes back to what Richard said earlier about that move is a chance for you to drive them and work with them, and you learn and they learn, and they're prepared then. If one of them gets sick out there, you're easily able to drive it up. If there's a fire, you're easily able to drive them wherever you need to. These are all things that you've spent just a little bit of time in your move, but you've learned and they've learned, and now they're ready for whatever situation. Just back to your gather thing real quick. Good movement draws good movement.
Yep.
So you go out there and you start a group slowly gathering their calves and going, and then you go over to another group. Well, they've already kind of felt this good. See, this is the part of the good. Whereas you go out there with your kind of your roping buddies where you're talking about ramming and jamming, there's several of those cows that say, come on, Junior, we're out of here. And they're brushing up and you're not getting them, or it's going to be hard. And instead, when you do it this way, these cows come out of the brush. They want to be. It's like the ice cream truck. You know, when the ice cream truck, everybody's going. And whereas if it's like when we were in Mexico with the trucks and the guys with the machine guns in the back of the truck, man, I step away from the window. I don't want to be around that. So these are things that will help you in your gather, because the minds of the animals are in the proper state and they're wanting to move in the direction. They want to follow other animals when the situation is right for them.
So, and that's kind of where I was going with that question about how do we gather the corners? If you've got good movement from a portion of the herd, and maybe you can tell me if there's a certain percentage you think you should shoot for, they're gonna draw those out, right?
Yeah,
they're gonna draw some of them because they're like, well, we don't want to miss out on wherever they're going. You know, maybe they're going to good water, better grass, whatever, and we want to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's just, and that's why this, you know, in this copy thing, you can't copy. You even have the same pasture, and every time you gather it, you'll be doing it different. So don't have a plan, don't have a number, don't have anything like that. You just go out to do the job. So you go out and you do something and you see how it's working, and then you do something else.
My most important objective that I'm trying to achieve on that first little group that I come to is to just start them and get them to walk away straight. And if you start them right, they'll just keep going. Now, if you start them wrong, the opposite will occur. They'll go a little ways and then they'll stop and come back after you've left. But that too is just an explanation of what you did may have not been quite right.
Well, and I think it's starting to click. It's starting to click that it doesn't matter where the corral is, what direction the gate opens. Gather that group, get them walking away straight, get them moving, and drive them towards other animals, even if it's away from the gate. Gather up everything that way, and then you can turn and move towards the gate.
Absolutely, because it all starts with the gather, and if the gather is good, then the whole day goes good.
People are so focused on that gate. In fact, Dad always liked to leave the gate shut. Just don't. The gate's not even a part of it. We're going to gather these animals, and we're going to gather them properly.
He said you need to get them working for you before you ever get to the gate, and that means that they're walking away straight when you're putting pressure on them.
This is so foreign to almost everywhere I go to work, and if any of my neighbors are listening to this, it's not you. Just assume that I'm not talking about your place right now. But so many, as a pastor of a country church, I go to dozens of brandings every year, and in more cases than I would like to admit, we end up at a long trot or even a lope coming into the pen where we're going to brand them. And yes, I mean, just think about obviously every pair is a mispair at that point. Probably none of them are coming in with their calf at that point.
Right.
And so, and again, the bottom line of this is the money lost with the recovery from that stressful event.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yep. Yeah. Dad felt production loss, which is what you're talking about here, was higher than mortality or morbidity combined.
Yeah.
And you have no idea it's happening.
Well, he said it was a drop in the bucket.
Right.
The mortality, morbidity is nothing but a drop in the bucket.
Compared with the
compared
production.
to what the production loss is that you can't see.
Yeah.
And that's the worst part of it is I look at it like depreciation on a piece of equipment. You don't really see that. You don't write a check for it, but the new pickup that costs $70,000 new, the next year is only worth $55,000, and that's without any dents in it. But that's just gone. That money is gone somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And this is the same. And you don't really have a way. We've got some stories in Smile and Mean It of situations where mom and dad were able, that you are able to. And there are always anecdotes. We've got a Mennonite fella in our area who's been doing this stockmanship probably 10 years at least, trained all his kids. He said he AIs everything, his beef cows. He said his AI conception rate just keeps going up and up. And he knows it's from his properly gathering the cows, properly sorting them, putting them up the chute, doing the AI. And so there's
and settling them once you're done.
Right. All these things are, so you've got all these, of course, weight gain, illness, which you do see that. But AI, even just regular breed up, all these things are things that you don't know you're missing out on.
But even with illness, there was a long period of time of lost production before the illness was visible on the outside, right?
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. And the feedlot, when Dad worked up there, if there was a sick animal in the pen, he'd tell him, go pull 10 more. He said, because if there's one sick animal, that means there's others that are getting ready to get sick, and you want them too. And then you work, you treat them, and then you work on your pen. You got something going on there that you have to deal with. So just because you only treat one, you've got a whole bunch of others that are struggling in some way.
When you talk about settling animals after that, after the event, whatever, we're working cattle.
Yes.
When you talk about settling, is that the same as what you were talking about with receiving these stalkers?
Yes, it is.
You stop them, then you start
Exactly
them,
the
stop
same.
them again, walk away.
I follow the last one out of the chute, and I take it and the others wherever I want to leave them, and I may drive them in and then keep driving them for a little ways, and then walk out wide and up the side, and I just stop them right there. And I watch to see that they're all comfortable in being stopped there, and they like where I've left them.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you can just turn around and walk off because they are settled.
And if you see signs that they aren't, if some of them are, then just drive them some more. This thing about driving them, and there's all what terminology, take them for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. There's something there that happens between the handler and the livestock.
Yep.
These are domesticated animals, most of them, you got your bison or, elk or whatever, but most of the ones that your audience is working with are domesticated animals. And I think we underestimate our part in their life.
Oh, I do too.
They have been bred for, they lived in, even today, they live in the same house building in some places. So that's where the warmth is. They're right there. And when here, the way we sometimes treat them, it's really hard on them. And so we need to step up and take the responsibility for their mental state. I mean, we're already good. We do not have to talk in this about feed rations or how to get clean water or grazing or that stuff is great. We've got that down, but their minds have got to be right, because if that's not right, the best clean water, the best pasture in the world, it's not going to do it.
So earlier on, I think I heard you say that once you've got momentum started, that the zigzag becomes less of an important thing, and you can trail along kind of with them until you see the back end slow down. Then you go back to the zigzag. Did I understand that right?
Yeah,
you did.
Yep.
And that covers it quite well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, we need to italicize the part of not getting ahead of the back animals. Because once you stop those, then it stops the ones in front of them, and then the front stopped, and now you got a big problem.
I think everything, not everything, but many things about conventional stockmanship, I've got scare quotes for those that are listening, around stockmanship are wrong, because how many drives do you know of where you've got riders way up front on the sides, and you're sending so many conflicting messages to those animals that it's kind of a wonder that things don't go more wrong more often.
Exactly.
And they'll actually tend to, not only do they stop the animals behind them, but they'll tend to spin out the animals in front of them, because they are looking at that guy coming up. So there, and then, but the problem is when that animal cuts out, he stops it and he thinks, wow, it's so great. I was here to stop that animal, but he caused it. So then
they normally get somebody else over to help them. And so then it just gets worse.
Yeah, it's sad, because it just keeps building, because he thinks, oh, it was so great that I was up here, but they caused it, and we've seen it happen again and again. So just understand you now that let's just do one other thing. A person in the lead, that's fine, that's good. A person in the lead. A good lead person or lead dog is really can be a help, especially in a long drive. You can kind of keep that front, not just leaving the country, and you can help if there's turns that need to be made. But you see, that's a whole different position than being on the side.
Right.
And you can be there to open the gate or whatever ahead of everybody else. And then you don't have to worry. I mean, I would imagine if things are going well, that gate, while things might get necked down for a minute, really doesn't represent a slow or a stop in momentum, that the momentum can continue through the gate.
That's right.
Yeah. That T to the gate, though, is really, really important. That straight line, you do not want to cup around the animals, be at a gate or, well, anytime, but at a gate, it's worse, because as you mentioned, they can't all go through at once. So some of them at the side might have to have room to kind of circle and come back into the group. But if you're cupped around, they can't do that. All they can do is come out and run over top of you. And then you get mad. That darned old 39, she always does that. Well, you were in the wrong spot.
It was actually 93, but
okay.
Last one to come out of the hills every year, 93.
Yep, that's right. That's right. And I guess we should mention here, the universal law of stockmanship is the animals are never wrong.
Yep.
You did it.
Yep.
What you're seeing is what you're causing.
Yeah.
And so
that story,
if you're aware of that
story the fella told at Jared's thing, at the end of us, when that Jared asked if anybody had any stories about Dad, and he was at a school years ago, and some guy come up to Dad and, well, so you mean that when we're out there gathering them and they're running all over and doing this, that's my fault? And Dad said, well, were they doing that before you went out there?
The other thing that this brings to mind is the old kind of the disparity between efficiency and effectiveness.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
again, back to yesterday, I get stuck. We kick the livestock out of the trailer. One of them was a bull that I had on there as well. And so the heifers, we've got them good. We're maintaining good momentum. I'm trying not to be directly behind them. Probably did a little too much paralleling, not enough zigzagging, but we're learning here, right?
Yeah.
And so we get to this one point where we need to make a turn, and I get everybody turned. Well, the bull's like, well, I see that dam over there. It looks nice and cool. The water looks deep and clear. I'd rather be there. And so I kind of get him stopped, but I fear that I'm losing the rest of these heifers. So I go back to them and I kind of leave him there. And I just walk those heifers right past him. And he's kind of now caught like, ooh, would I rather be with them or in the water? And so I just kind of slow down enough and walk a little bit into his side, and he decides I'd rather be with the heifers.
Yeah,
and
perfect.
I was more shocked than anybody there that worked.
That's perfect. And it's more of that good movement is when you maintain and also taking care of the problem that's going to hurt you the most first. Those heifers was going to hurt you the most if something went bad with that. So the bull, he's slow. Even if he went over in the pond, you're going to be able to get him. It's no big deal. but if
Can't leave him.
you getting that good movement going with those heifers, and then just a proper amount of just a little signal to him, sort of like a suggestion. Hey, what do you think about following those heifers? And instead of, the stick thing, and we try to absolutely avoid anything that's using fear or force. And that includes crowd gates, sticks, anything where you're using either a fear, a yelling, a waving your arms, or a force, ramming your horse up into them, or something. We're going to use our position and our angles and our speed of pressure. Those are the communication tools that we're going to use.
Yeah, I almost always turn it down whenever somebody asks me if I want a sorting stick or a flag or anything like that. And I get weird looks for doing it, but I do. I just almost always turn them down.
Yeah. It is, honestly, you become a different person when you have a stick in your hand, even if you would never hit an animal with it. Yeah. I'm sure you wouldn't, but I don't know what it is. We become different when we have a stick in our hand, and they sense that, and it destroys every bit of trust that you have. And then they don't feel as comfortable to turn their back and walk away from you.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
Yep. So, Tina, I've noticed you taking some notes throughout this interview. If you had anything on that list that needed to be said here before I kind of say my last piece.
I
have one little plug I wanted to put in. Where the stockmanship courses are still available. Bud passed 12 years ago, but we're trying to carry on the torch. And we have online classes that will be beginning soon of stockmanship and Bud's marketing both. And we have a few still face-to-face classes around, and they're available. So,
and Mom still sells the two different stockmanship video options, the 5-hour or the 18-hour. And it's all there. It's actually all in the 5-hour one.
Yeah.
And these are just they're resources out there for people to but it's just a start. Yeah. You have to take it, and you have to go out in the pasture.
It's a lifelong endeavor. And I don't think, Bud said after 45 years, he had barely scratched the surface. And I told him, I said, Bud, I haven't found the surface to scratch it yet. So.
Yeah, no, very good. I appreciate that. One last thing that I think I understood throughout this, and I think I've seen it work in my own. So we're going to make a turn, and we are paddling this canoe, so we're rowing on the opposite side of where we want to head, right?
Yep.
When we see that turn start to happen, we turn away from them, right? Is that
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fine.
that's how
It depends if you're horseback or if you're walking, and you want to go straight. If you're walking, it's not as important.
Right.
If you're horseback or four-wheeler, you absolutely have to turn away.
Yes.
If you turn in, you're just going to split your group, but you got to watch. It's a timing thing.
Yeah.
It's why walking is easier, because you might just go ahead and cut back. And then you see, no, that turn hadn't committed itself. So you have to immediately come back.
Sure.
So it's, you
pressure
you
in the
watch.
corners, and you
Pressure in the middle.
you pressure in the middle, and you guide from the corners is what it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You pressure on the corner that you want to go the opposite direction, or the opposite of the corner you're working on.
Because they have to speed up. The one corner has to speed up in order to make the turn.
Yep.
The other corner needs to be left alone. They can slow up a little bit or stop even, whatever. And then you have to watch that lead and make sure it's committed to about the angle you want.
Yeah.
And
watch the lead.
And just keep adjusting. That's,
look at nothing and see everything is kind of what it is. And I know that's another broad brush there to paint with, but that's exactly what it is.
When you talk about look at nothing and see everything, is that related? Like, I know in horses, when you look a horse directly in the eye, they perceive that as a threat. Is that the same in cattle? Or maybe...
I don't see that as a problem with cattle. I've never worried about it, really. I try not to walk directly toward an animal that I want to start, as in not directly head on to it.
Oh, yeah.
I'll come in the side, or I'll come in at an angle, but I don't walk directly at the head of the animal that I want to start straight on to it.
And that really probably goes back to the predator thing, right? I mean, predators attack directly from the front, directly from the back, because it's the blind spot, right?
Absolutely.
It's harder for them to see how fast you're coming. It's like a car that's headed towards you, even if it's in the lane next to you. When it's headed towards you, you have a little harder time telling how fast it's coming. Like if you're wanting to do a left turn in front of them, how fast is that car coming, kind of thing. And that's the same with them. And they don't like that, because they want to
just go where you can walk past them on either side, and that will do exactly what you wanted to do, and it won't upset them.
That eye thing, I think that it could be just a, kind of an offshoot thing. I think it can with a bull. You want to, avoid. Sometimes that can be as a little bit of a strong kind of thing that and you don't want to do that with a bull or with but I don't know that it's something you have to like really worry about.
I don't think it's the most important part.
No.
It may be a small percentage, but even at that, it's a small percentage. So
all those other things we've talked about, your angle, your speed, your attitude, be happy.
Yep. Enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. And it will go such a long way to go into them too. Yeah. That's the smile and mean it is just so important, that you be happy. Hey, they break back, we're gathering them and they break, it's like, okay, hey, we need the exercise anyway. Let's, okay, I did that. I went too far there. No problem. Let's go back and get them instead of yelling at each other and, going downhill from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, very good. I really appreciate the time. Very much appreciate the perspective. Has been very helpful for me personally, and I hope it is for others. I will have links to Hand in Hand LivestockSolutions.com on the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/386. If anybody's interested in the courses that you guys have coming up, still doing some live schools too, it looks like, correct?
We always do one in Bolivar before the Bud Summit.
Okay.
And so I've actually got that one on the calendar. Others, I don't know. We just did one in Sydney, and I don't know. Sometimes we'll do them. It just depends. But the online courses are still a good way. And you might link stockmanship.com too. There's just a lot of good information there in the items that Mom sells.
Yep. And that Bud Summit is always kind of the second week in March. Is that right?
March. It depends. Sometimes we, balance around other stuff.
But that information's on the websites too.
Actually, that is actually a benefit for subscribers to the stockmanship.com subscription website, or for our students who attend the school before the Bud Summit are eligible to go to the Bud Summit. But if anybody's interested in that, either email us or Mom, and we'll give you more information.
Sure. Yeah. Again, links for all that in the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/386. Tina, Richard, thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having us, Clay. We appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks.
Yep.
Very good stuff there. Really one of the most tangibly helpful conversations I've had about stockmanship. There's been lots of good experiences out in the field. Grew up, my dad taught me a lot of really good, helpful things. But just as in terms of a conversation, that one was very, very helpful to me personally. Hope it was to you as well. Really looking forward to next week's episode on the Working Cows podcast. Towards the end of some bonus content that I was recording with Dallas Mount, I asked him a question about what do we make of the species and the different things that grow from year to year on a given landscape. And he said, well, I'm probably not the guy to ask. I don't pay as close of attention to those things as maybe I should. But the most grass nerdy person I know is Shannon Sims, and you should definitely ask him that question. So, and Dallas wanted to make sure that I played that comment at the end of an episode so Shannon could hear it, and I forgot to do that. So I'm a man of my word. I'm going to play the clip of Dallas saying these things for Shannon to hear, and then we're going to talk about what do we make of the different species that grow from year to year. Because one thing I've noticed on the operation that my family and I have been entrusted with, is that it's different. Every year is different. Different things grow every year, and I'm wondering if it's not something to do with or in some way connected to the different years. I mean, every winter has been different since we've been there, and every summer's been different, every spring's been different, every fall's been different. So I'm wondering if those seasons and the way that they play out really do have an impact on the things that grow. So we'll be talking to Shannon Sims about that on another episode of the Working Cows podcast coming your way real soon. We will see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.